trying to find the things that I was going to try to show off, but I just can't seem to get anything organized right now. Chasing everything everywhere. Just trying to see if I can pull out some of the stuff I was working on with the map software, but whatever. Too much going on in my life right now to keep track of it all. It'd be nice to be able to just sit down and work on what I need to work on. But that's not going to happen, is it? Of course not. Nobody's ever going to give me permission to do the things I need to do. For me, I'm always going to have somebody else using my time differently. So, here we are. How are you? I hope life's treating you better than all the wackiness that's going on in the world. So, one of the things I did manage to get done recently was I got down to storage. I pulled out this thing of all things. And I wanted to try it out. It's something I had never actually used. But, I mean, they're pretty straightforward as far as devices go. And you can pretty much run any hard candies or sugars through these things, supposedly. So I want to kind of give it a try. See what I can make with it. And I've still got a bunch of those candy canes from Christmas time, so I may give that a try. I also have I want to finish posting the videos I did for the jelly bean taste tests and get those up and running, because I have recorded a bunch more taste tests of other things since then, but I'm not uploading what I've recorded, and I've got enough of them now that I could really just keep going. And I've got many I would normally consider doing, but I have a fair number of movies. I have a watch list on my YouTube channel. It's just things like Justice League, Wonder Woman, and a bunch of those types of movies. So I think I probably have like 12 or 13 movies on there that I want to watch. And our Dollar Tree has been very kind to us with supplies of DVDs for cheap. So $1 a piece. I'll go through some of these. Intruders, which is a BBC program apparently. Real Live. The new version of RoboCop. Her. This one struck me as awesomely interesting looking, partly because I imagine it's going to be cheesy as all get out, but The Immortal Wars. And Slight. And then this one, I got this one right around the time this all started. So this one's Inferno with Tom Hanks, based off of a Dan Brown novel. And basically, the description on this one was part of the reason why I said, okay, I kind of have to get this now. This is in the contemporary action thriller, the famous symbologist Robert Langdon, Tom Hanks, wakes up in an Italian hospital with amnesia and finds himself the target of a manhunt. Will help him recover his memory. Together, they race across Europe against the clock to stop a virus that would wipe out half the world's population. It's a little dark, but it was kind of funny that it showed up on the Dollar Tree shelf for $1 right around the time that we had a pandemic hit. So I thought it would be worth taking a look at. Her is one that was supposedly really good, and it came a while back, and I'm just kind of curious about it. I saw the original RoboCop when I was younger. I don't know how the reboot works for some of that, but some of these others I've never heard of. I looked them up, and they're not A-grade movies. Let's just put it that way. But I want to, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think I have another 2 or 3 out here somewhere. So maybe about 10 movies that I want to watch just in the stacks of ones that I've managed to get. And then you look at maybe another 10 or 13 on YouTube or online services that I want to watch. So there's definitely a part of me that's like, there's some movies I definitely want to watch. I've been reading some graphic novels, and I have a collection of books that I'm accumulating too around the same time from thrift stores. A lot of them are not like fun fiction books. So I don't have as many of those. I do have a few collections of short stories that I want to revisit. And I have board game stuff that I'd like to check out. So I do have a fair number of these things that I want to do. I think somehow I've overcomplicated shoot camera for a long time in a living room setup. I could probably pop in a green screen behind me and do some playing around with some of that, but we'll see. I may just, I got to remember why I started doing what I started doing with this channel was it's journaling to a certain degree. It's me talking about the things that I'm interested in and sharing those ideas and thoughts with other people. I got too wrapped up for a little while and thinking like, okay, so if I want to do some really big stuff, I need to do some upgrades. I don't need to do upgrades. It's not going to be possible to do upgrades for some of right now. But in the meantime, I shouldn't stop doing the things I'm interested in talking about. Like, I legitimately think about doing reshoots of the Star Wars prequels and reimagining those. And by the same token, I was okay with the first one of the Star Wars sequels. The second one, I was like, that was an all right film. Where are we going with it? And then the third one didn't go anywhere with the second one, so it just kind of left that as a hanging problem that never got fixed. And so I watched it. I was particularly unhappy with the third one. I kind of wanted to give my thoughts on that, but I also I really think that it sets up the whole situation. But I have to give it some thought about how I want to play with that. But that's a bigger project. That's something that's going to take more time for me to get to. But in the meantime, I've read a few comic series. I've watched a few movies, and I kind of want to I've sort of cut myself off from that. Part of it's just the job and being an essential worker right now. Like, I know technically I could just walk away from that at any time. Like, I don't need to be doing what I'm doing. Like, I could legitimately survive without it. But it's like, I don't quit things very easy. If you ever bought into like the Beanie Babies or something like that, and you saw the craze that was going on, and you bought a bunch of these Beanie Babies with the awareness that a lot of people were paying upwards of $300 for one little plush toy. If you managed to acquire some of those things, and were waiting to see if you could get that top price for them, the price fell out the bottom of a lot of that stuff. So you got left with a bunch of them that you couldn't sell for the price you bought them for, let alone a profit. So if you were doing that kind of thing, and then you keep them in storage until you are sure you could get your price back, and you just keep storing them over and over and over again for years on end, trying to get the situation to turn around so that you can make your money back on them. Here's the thing. It's costing you to store those. The sunk cost fallacy is the idea that you've sunk so much into this that it's foolish to get rid of it now. You've supported this investment so long that if you walked away from it now, you wouldn't get your investment back. But here's the trick. You're not getting your investment back no matter what you do. The stored costs of keeping those things for long periods of time, they're going to make the cost of owning them hundreds of times what you'll ever get back. And I feel like I've sort of been doing that same thing with the employment that I'm currently working at. I feel like I'm sunk costing that situation, where I'm telling myself, oh, well, this will be worth it if we just put a little more into this. I don't think it's ever going to be more worth than it was. Like, what made it valuable isn't coming back. But I still don't walk away from anything easier. Like, I don't really know what my goal anymore in that situation is. But yeah, so I got to think about that a little bit. But I have some things that I want to do for video projects for this channel and my other channel, and I have to rethink how I want to do things. And it'll probably be decreasing some of this live. I may do a check-in once a week. I'm so used to doing these live videos that it's easier for me to be too busy to do these than to do something else and not do these at all. I can keep telling myself that I can keep telling myself that I can come back and do more of these live video updates. But at the very moment that I sit here and think, maybe I'll do it a different style, it means that my brain is going like, then we're going to leave this alone and we're not going to do it anymore. And I feel like that would be a shame, because I do get something out of doing these live videos. I'm not sure how I'm going to proceed yet. I've been having a fair amount of fun working on my role-playing game setting. Building up some of the mythology, playing around with some of the power development techniques for character play. So basically, if somebody wanted to play a character in the first setting, well, I could probably go into this more detail at a later time, but in the primary setting, the overarching setting, the original premise was that everybody starts the game with a special talent. And so I'm building a list of how to make that happen. But I've also been I had a really rough week last week with work, and as sort of a reward for myself for putting up with that garbage, I purchased a role-playing game supplement that I've been looking at. Well, not a supplement, really. A whole role-playing game system. I bought a couple of them, actually. I bought one that I'd been looking at later that was a French game design that was really hard to track down a copy of. And then the other one that was sitting around thinking about it for a while was, there's a game that's produced in Sweden that's really popular and well known, but they've never made it for outside audiences in the US or English speaking worlds. And so there isn't an English version. So I'm looking at it, and they have this newer version, and it has artwork by an artist I respect the artwork of. And I looked at it, I could do this. and it's like the PDF versions of the game for the game itself is like $9.98 US dollars, and the setting information is an additional book that's another $9.99 or something, or $10.99 or something like that. So for like $22, I could have all of that material for a game in a language I do not speak, but I would have a copy of it. And so what I debated back and forth for a little while, and I just kind of said, you know what? I kind of want to give it a go. I kind of want to see what they have to offer. And I debated about it. Am I going to sink $22 into a game that I can't read right now? And just like after a really, really crappy week and the crappiest of crappy days, I sat down and said, like, $22, that's not that much. So I could give it a file that I'm building and installing some of the visual formatting. So like the header and the page art on some of them, and just seeing if I can build it out together in such a way that it's a passable facsimile of what they made in Swedish. And then I'm still debating whether or not I want to go to the degree of printing and binding into a physical book for myself. Because remember, this book has never been translated into English. And so, like, the translation through Google Translate is rough, but doing well enough that it's easy enough to follow that I could go back over and do a second pass of human adjustment. And I've mentioned it to a couple of people I know, and a few people have volunteered that they have some familiarity with Swedish, that I should be able to lean on them for anything that really looks too rough. So I'm looking at this, I'm translating this game, this Swedish game. It's Drakar och Demoner, and it is a game that's never been translated into English. I purchased the PDF files, and it's been kind of interesting I've only really just started translating the first of the two books. But it's, the translating software has actually done pretty well. The artwork's pretty good. But the thing I'm finding more interesting than anything else is just the process of breaking down and rebuilding after translation this book with its artwork and its formatting and styling. I'm learning a lot about formatting a published book on a role-playing system. So I'm learning a little bit more about how to use the different formatting features of the PDF program that I'm using to build it, and how to embed images, and how to formulate layout. And I feel like that's definitely a valuable lesson towards maybe formatting my own books in the future for something I want to do for a game design. But it's also been absolutely hilarious because sometimes the translation software does a good job, but sometimes it does a really, really silly job. I was translating one of the chapter titles, and usually the bigger the chunk of text you give it, the more context it's able to derive from it and get an understanding of what it's trying to do. But if you're giving it just a part of me is like, does Swedish have that much leeway with the language? Or is Google Translate not fully grasping what I'm telling it? So I put in one of the section heads was, I can't even remember what it was in Swedish, but putting it through the translator, it came up as Attacks and mating was the translation it gave me. Attacks and mating. And I'm like, that's not this type. This isn't that type of game. There are no mating rituals or any, like, that's not part of regular combat, and it's certainly not paired with combat in any way. So I'm like, yeah, that's a sort of a wonky translation. So what is it they were aiming for? And so I had to go through and run it through a couple different translators, and I forget what the actual translation was that made the most sense for the context. But there are a couple ways to get there. Whereas it's interesting because there's another section I did that was, the first time I ran it through the translator, it translated as bearings. And it's like, there's a chapter in a game about combat and fantasy realms with monsters and battling that has the name Bearings. But the interesting thing is that the section head was translated as Bearings, but underneath of it was the same word that translated as Bearings, and it was paired with another word that gave it greater context. So when the translator took that one, it translated it as creatures and wilderness or something like that. Whereas as a standalone word, it got it completely wrong. But I'm fascinated by the fact that the same word can mean something about bearings and creatures, depending on the context of how it's used as a noun. It's, yeah, I don't know if it's used in different parts of speech. It may have different endings or different beginnings on them, and those changes can vary drastically versus I don't know. I don't know enough about Swedish to be able to say anything about any of that. I just find it interesting that you can get such vastly different meanings from each of those contextual uses. Oh, great. That's another lost thing down there. I need to work better at taking care of this area because I can't find anything anymore. Too many things ongoing. I'm also, like I said, working on my own setting, so there's a lot of that going on right now. I'm trying to do some photography of foodstuffs for my card game. That's sort of hit or miss. I finally did find some cherries, by the way, and peaches, which turned out really nicely. So that's sort of where I am right now. I'm going to get some dinner. I'm not going to run 45 minutes on tonight, so I'm going to go get some dinner. We'll work on a few things. I will try to be back tomorrow. I'm not really great at doing that lately, but I will do what I can. So I appreciate any patience you may have had. I will catch you again. And I think I'm also going to be looking at doing these as pre-recorded uploads. The live stuff seems to be giving me some trouble. I might just have too much running on my computer for it to work. So I don't know. I will have to look at it. I will look into making sure I can at least get something going again regularly and not sweat too much whether or not I'm doing it right yet, and just have fun doing it. That's the point, right? All right, so I'm going to call it for tonight. Take care. Have a good one. Hope you're doing well. See you in the future.